Cool. It's really good to see you all tonight. There's more people now than there were when we started. It's like there's a lot of latecomers. Yeah, no, there's two. It's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool to be here. I just want to kind of share some things. Basically, I love what Josh and Cara say. I love what Chris and Becca have said about us being a family. I treat this as me kind of sharing with my family and sharing with my friends. Some of these thoughts are kind of things that I'm processing and things that I'm doing right now. So they're really real, they're really relevant with what I'm going through and just what I'm doing right now every day. So I'm just going to share some stuff with you, if that's all right. Just some ideas, just something that's God doing in my heart. And yeah, basically, what Judith said last week was amazing. Who was here last week? Woo! You did a great job. You were awesome. I was listening to your talk in the coffee shop, and it was amazing. What? Why is that funny? One of the things that Judith said just really hit me, and it was basically this: we're not defined by our circumstances. We're not denying that they are there, but we're not defined by them. And I was just kind of thinking about this, and for the season that we're on as a people here at Josh Jan, and just for us all individually, this is like a really important message. And basically, I just want to kind of build a little bit on what Judith did and what Judith said last week. She's done all the work. I'm just going to rock up this week and just kind of like put a little cherry on top. So sorry about that, Judith, but actually I'm not sorry at all. I want to just tell you a little story to start off with. Stories are great because they make me relax, and they make you relax, and they make everyone relax. I love this. I can move. I don't have to hold a microphone. It's great. I want to tell you a story. So I am now the age of, I was going to ask you to guess my age, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say my age is 26, all right? That's quite old, yeah? So I'm now 26 years of age, and which means that, how long ago is this? My maths is awful. 8 years ago, I was doing my A-levels. Who here has done A-levels? I'm guessing most of us have done A-levels. I was at college, and I did, what did I do? I did 4 AS levels. I did music, I did English literature, I did history, and I did sociology. I decided which subjects to do on my way to college. I didn't know what to do. So I rang my sister, and I said, hey, Rachel, I have no idea what to do. What subjects did you do? And she told me, and I picked them. So that's how I decided what subjects to do at A-level. And sociology actually was my favorite one. Got to the end of AS, so the end of the year, and we were doing June exams. And I had this exam on family. Who's done sociology? Like A-levels or... Yeah, it's great. It's really interesting. It's amazing. I loved it, and I still love it, actually. But I found myself doing this family exam, and it was very interesting, and did it, and came out from it, and about 6 weeks later, I got my results back, and I got a U. And I know. That's what you get for just doing the same exam or the same lectures that your sister did, I suppose. But yeah, I got a U. And I was a bit like, well, that was a bit rubbish. That didn't go so well. And went back in September. Funnily enough, even though I got a U in it, I decided not to drop sociology. I thought, I can do better. I'm going to keep going with this. I actually dropped music because I was even worse at that. Funnily enough, I can't read music. Who knew? Came back in September, and my teacher came to me and said, Andy, remember that exam that you got a U in for families? And I said, yes, of course. It's a very significant moment in my life. And she said, hey, well, in January, you can do a resit if you want. But you got to take it seriously. If you want to do a resit, then it's going to cost £50 for the school. We'll pay it, obviously, but you've got to tell me right now that you're going to take this seriously. It's probably worth pointing out that I think I went to about 46% of my lectures at A-level. I nearly got kicked out within about 2 months of being there. That was bad. Anyway, so she said, look, if you're going to get entered into this research, you've got to take it seriously. I said, yeah, that's fine. I'll take it really seriously. It's fine, not a problem. We got to January, hadn't thought about it. And we started exam week, and I realized at the beginning of exam week that I had this resit happening, and I hadn't even looked at the book or read anything about family since I got a U, first time around. This is a true story, by the way. I'm not making any of this up. And I decided at the beginning of this week that I was just going to keep a really low profile. I was going to not see anyone, not speak to anyone, and I was just going to hope that the exam went by and no one would notice that I wasn't there, and it would be all fine, and life would be great. And Monday came and went, and then Tuesday came and went, and I didn't look at the timetable, so I didn't know when the exam was. And it got to Wednesday, and I don't know, my school worked where you had 2 lectures, and then a little break, and then a third lecture, and then lunch for about 45 minutes, and then 4th and 5th period. And at the end of the third period of the day, so just before lunch, I thought to myself, you know what, this is really bad. The school have paid for me to go and do this exam. I should probably go and at least see when it was/is. It might have been on Monday or Tuesday. I should probably go and just see when it is. So I went along to where the exam board was and where all the exam timetables were, and had a look, and basically it was on Wednesday, 4th period, which was about 45 minutes away from where I was then. And suddenly just kind of went, right, okay, so now I've got another decision to make. I either go home and stay at home, or I go home, grab my sociology book, do some very quick revision, and come back and do the exam. I decided, well, the first part of that is to just go home. So I lived about 5 minutes away, a 5-minute run, a swift jog, I'll call it, which is exactly what I did. I ran over the field, jumped the fence, got back to my house, and I remember getting my sociology book. I had to dig it out. I really hadn't looked at it at all for the entire, well, it was nearly a year, and I opened it up, sat down on my kitchen table, and just opened it and just started reading about the family. And about 2 paragraphs in, I realized that this was completely pointless. There was no way that a single bit of what I was reading was going to go in. I was completely unprepared for this exam, and I knew it. And then I kind of just sat there and was like, well, I should probably just turn the TV on and not turn up to this exam, because it's not going to go any better than the first one. And I don't know why, but I decided to go. And I turned up a bit late, and my teacher was there at the door as I arrived. You know those I can't remember what they're called. They're not real buildings. They're kind of made out from wood, and schools use them all the time. They're just like shacks almost, and they put classrooms in and pass it off as a classroom. It was in one of them, and she was waiting outside, and I approached, kind of dawdling along, and she was not very happy to see me because I was late by about 4 minutes, I think. And she said to me, I was getting quite angry with you because we paid for you to enter this exam, and now you're late, and I thought you weren't going to turn up. I was like, I was always going to turn up. Of course I was. What are you worried about? It's fine. So I sat down, did the exam. Can't really remember doing the exam. Can't remember the feeling after it. Can't remember anything about it. I do, however, remember 6 weeks later, when I was sat in the common room playing cards with my friends, and it was results day, and this teacher walked in, and I saw a flurry of activity, all the students who had done their research swarm her and be like, what did I get, and lots of people be really excited, and lots of people kind of look a little bit disappointed, and I just kind of sat there and eventually made eye contact with my teacher. And she literally did this. She turned to me and went, it was terrifying. I've never seen, it was weird. And then I freaked out. I just kind of wandered over, hello, how's it going? And she, it was weird because she had 2 kind of pieces of paper, just like this. And my last name's Williams. Everyone knows that that's towards the end of the alphabet, so it's going to be on the 2nd page. She did this. She literally started there and then worked all the way down the names. I was like, what are you doing? I'm obviously on the 2nd page. And then she turned it around, and then she went all the way down this page until she found Williams. I think she was just increasing the tension. And got to my name, and then moved over. And next to my name, there was an A. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And that's the end of my talk, guys. That's it. Just wanted to big myself up a bit, thanks. Yeah, and basically, I don't know how, but I managed to get an A out from doing this exam. And I've thought about this for a long time. It's quite a good story to tell. Some of you probably will have heard it. But like preparation is really important. When I did that exam, I hadn't studied at all. So it's not that like I magicked the knowledge up from somewhere, right? I don't think that happened. I don't think I was just kind of like walked into the exam and suddenly knowledge like arrived in my brain and it was all fine. I got an A. I knew that information. It was in there somewhere. I just didn't know it was there. Yeah? Does that make sense? So like the first exam I did, I just didn't happen to know that information. And an exam is just like a test of what you already know, right? It's not like anything special. And the first exam where I got a U, I obviously didn't know any of the information. The second exam, I knew it all. It just happened to be on the things that I really knew about. And this kind of got me thinking about like preparation, and I was talking to Josh about this a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, like we always talk about preparation. Preparation is really important, right? You heard the expression like fail to plan, or plan to fail. No, fail to plan to fail. Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously very intelligent. Sometimes like we find ourselves like just planning and feeling really prepared, and we go into a situation, and we might go into exams, or we might go into different like social situations, and we get into them and we're like, yeah, I feel really prepared for this. I feel like I got this. I feel like I know what I'm doing. Maybe you revised perfectly for all the information that you need. And you feel like you got it. But occasionally in life, you go into these situations where you just feel unprepared for it. You don't feel ready for it. You feel, whoa, like I feel out of my depth here. I feel this is not quite like comfortable for me. I'm a bit scared. A little bit like I was with my exam. Maybe like for you guys here tonight, I'm kind of talking to us like as a people, but also this is like true for us individually. Maybe you're here tonight and it's an exam that you just feel like a little bit unprepared for, or maybe it's something a bit deeper, like there's a relationship issue and you just feel unprepared to handle it, or there's something going on in your family and you don't feel prepared to kind of deal with it. You feel a bit like on your own, you feel a bit isolated, you're not sure what to do. Maybe like you've just been here over the last couple of weeks and like with Chris and Becca, like, and not being here, maybe you just feel like a little bit unprepared for that. Maybe you feel like, whoa, like that's kind of like hit me. I'm not sure kind of how to do that. I don't know what that means. And I want to just look at like how God prepares us and what he does, because he's good and he's faithful all the time. Like all the time. What Josh said tonight, like in worship, he's faithful all the time. And I just want to look at like two real quick Bible verses, like and Bible stories about like God's faithfulness and how he prepares us. You know, yeah, God's just so good. Yeah, so good. Like, it's ridiculous. Anyway, cool. So, first Bible verse I want to talk about. We don't need the Bible verses on the screens. Ah, cool. Look at that. The life you've been prepared for. Oh yeah, that's what this talk is called. The life you've been prepared for. Oh, that's good, isn't it? Cool. So the first Bible verse is in Daniel. Okay, so to put a little bit of context to this, I don't know about you, but we don't really talk about Daniel too much. We don't, well, sometimes we do, but we don't talk about the period that Daniel was written in too much. So everyone knows about like Israel's history. We kind of talk about it quite a lot. We talk about the like Genesis story, the forming of everything, Abraham, and we talk about the forming of a nation, and then how that nation's taken into captivity in Egypt, and eventually like the Exodus with Moses, and eventually they walk into the Promised Land, they enter the Promised Land, and then it kind of goes a little bit funny with like the judges and with the kings, and you have like a high point in Israel's history with Solomon where like everything's going really good, everything's going really well. And then you get to like lots of kings that basically weren't very good, and then you find yourself where Daniel is, which is kind of the lowest point. Actually, it's not kind of, it is completely the lowest point in Israel's history. This is when they've lost pretty much everything. Symbolically, they've lost their promised land. They've lost the promise. The Babylonians have come in and they've taken over. They've lost that. They've lost their temple. The Babylonians destroyed the temple eventually, and therefore they've kind of lost that significance in terms of a representative or a representation of the presence of Yahweh with them. So this is like the lowest point in Israel's history. And they find themselves, or Daniel finds himself with this king called Nebuchadnezzar, who is not a particularly nice guy. He's just a bit mean and a bit crazy, as we'll find out. So if you've got a Bible, you can turn to Daniel 2 if you want to, or I'll just read it out, whichever way you want. So here we go. We find ourselves here, King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In the second year of his reign, King Nebuchadnezzar started having dreams that disturbed him deeply. He couldn't sleep. So back in the day, in the ancient world, dreams were really important. They were like shadows of the future. So if you had a dream, if you were a person, you had a dream, it was kind of very significant for your future. If you were a king, it was even more significant because it wasn't just your personal future, but it was the future of your nation. So if King Nebuchadnezzar's here having a dream that's disturbing him, that's making him go, whoa, what's going on? That's really significant. I think dreams are still really significant. I think it's a massive way that God kind of speaks to his people. But here we find King Nebuchadnezzar having a bad dream. He couldn't sleep. He called on all the Babylonian magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and foretellers to interpret his dreams for him. When they came and lined up before the king, he said to them, I had a dream that I can't get out of my head. I can't sleep until I know what it means. So he's having some bad dreams. He's got all the people around him that he would usually use to interpret stuff like that, all the magicians, all the people who used that kind of thing. And he gets them around and he says, right guys, I've had this dream, I need some help with it. The foretellers say, long live the king. Tell us the dream and we will interpret it. And this is where we kind of see King Nebuchadnezzar, his kind of true colors and his kind of little crazy colors. The king answers and says, this is my decree. If you can't tell me both the dream itself and its interpretation, I'll have you ripped pieces, limb from limb, and your homes torn down. But if you tell me both the dream and its interpretation, I'll lavish you with gifts and honors. So go to it. Tell me the dream and its interpretation. So you can imagine you put yourself in this position where you're like, hey man, heard you've been having some bad dreams. You need me to interpret it for you. What's the dream? And the king kind of goes, no, you got to tell me the dream. And if you don't, I'm going to kill you. And I love the way that they respond, because they said they answered, if it please your majesty, tell us the dream. We'll give the interpretation. So they're a lot politer second time around. They're like, whoa, what's going on here? This is a bit scary. And the king turns around to them again and says, I know what you're up to. You're just playing for time. You know you're up a tree. You know that if you can't, by the way, I'm reading out the message. This probably isn't what they said, but it's like it. You know that if you can't tell me my dream, you're doomed. I see right through you. You're going to cook up some fancy stories and confuse the issue until I change my mind. Nothing doing. First tell me the dream, then I'll know that you're on the up, and up with the interpretation and not just blowing smoke in my eyes. So at this point, all the magicians turn around to him and just go, listen, man, this is crazy. No one's ever asked any of us to do this before. No king has had the audacity to ask his magicians to do this. What you're asking is impossible. It's crazy. You've got to tell us the dream. We can't just guess, or we can't just see what your dream is to interpret it. You need to tell us it first, and then we'll interpret it. It makes sense, right? It's logical. Anyway, not to Nebuchadnezzar, because he goes, right, okay, well, I'm putting a decree out, you're all going to die. So he signs this piece of paper, and a decree goes out amongst all of Babylon and all the magicians, everyone who's kind of in this group of people across the whole empire are going to get killed. And Daniel and his mates, I can never remember their names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, yes. they're in this group of people as well. And they realize, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure what today's brought, but we were once having a half-decent time of it, and now we're on death row. And Daniel's there, and he's being guarded, and he goes up to the guard, as you would do, wisely. I love the message because it says, Daniel wisely approached the guard. So, yes, you would. And he said, guard, why am I on death row? What's happened? I don't understand. What's going on? What's King Nebuchadnezzar up to? I don't get it. And the guard explains to him, says, oh, well, this is what's happened. This is the situation. And Daniel turns around and says, okay, cool. I'll tell you what. Why don't you get me an appointment with the king? I'll interpret the dream. I'll tell him what his dream is, and I'll interpret it for him as well. And the guard goes, cool. Great. Yeah, I think there's probably some rewards coming my way if I provide the answer to King Nebuchadnezzar's issue. So he does. And to cut a fairly longish story short, Daniel meets with Nebuchadnezzar, tells him the dream, interprets it, and Nebuchadnezzar's like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And Daniel just gets so much favor from it. But that's not the thing that amazes me about this story. The thing that amazes me most about this story is that Daniel finds out like what's going on, and then he says, you know what, I'll interpret the dream, no problem. I'll do it. But he arranges this meeting before he's had the interpretation of the dream. Okay? So while he's got nothing to go on. He hasn't received the interpretation of the dream. He's just like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. I've got this. And he hasn't got anything at that point. And then he acts in faith. Okay. Anyway, that's fun, isn't it? Is it coming towards me? Okay, cool. Anyway, we'll just ignore the balloon for a bit. I can't do that now because you're all looking at it. We need to get the balloon here, just to float. Anyway, so, man, that's thrown me. Yeah, so he's like he doesn't have this interpretation, and he just says, "Yeah, I'll tell the king exactly what the dream is." But before he's got it, he's acting totally in faith, and we see him kind of have this meeting with the guard and say, "Yeah, cool. I'll go to the king and tell him what his dream is." And the guard goes off to tell him, and you see Daniel straight away turn around and go to his mates and be like, "Right, guys, we need to pray." We need to just pray. We need to seek God. We need to worship, essentially. You know, like worship is what we just did. It's in singing. It's what we're doing right now. It's in kind of just going, God, I just want you to be the highest point in my life. I want to go to you in every situation, in every circumstance, because I know that you've got the answer in every situation and in every circumstance. If I'm having the best day, I go to you to thank you because you're the highest thing in my life. Therefore, you've given me everything that I need to enjoy this day. If I'm not having like such a good day, I'm going to go to you because you have all the answers that I need, because you're the highest point in my life. I'm going to worship you here. I'm going to worship you here. I'm going to give you worth in every situation. And that's what Daniel does. He goes, oh, man, okay, so I got to interpret this dream. Who can I go to? I'm going to go straight to God. I'm going to go straight to Yahweh because he has everything that I need. He's got my back. He'll prepare me. And what Daniel finds is that obviously eventually he goes and God's prepared him. He arrives and he's got the interpretation for the dream. Like he stands in that place and he talks to King Nebuchadnezzar and tells him exactly what his dream is. Can you imagine if someone said to you, I've dreamt something. Can you tell me what I dreamt and what it means? And you're like, yeah. And if you've read what the dream was, it's a pretty weird dream. Like, it's not just like, oh yeah, you're walking along with a kite and then you saw a cloud. It wasn't that. It was like pretty intense. And yeah, like Daniel was prepared. God prepared Daniel. He put himself in a position of worship and God prepared him. And there's like one other story that I just want to talk about. This is probably not hugely theologically accurate, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I just want to put you, I just want to go on a little journey with you, if that's all right. If you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. We're all very creative people here. But I just want to kind of imagine yourself, if you can, in Jerusalem in the 1st century, okay? And you're kind of walking along, and you kind of hear some people in this room in a house, and you just pop your head in, and there's 120 people there, and they're all just sat there, and they look like they're praying, they look like they're worshiping, and it's Pentecost, so there's people everywhere from all over the Roman Empire. They're all there. They've all gathered in Jerusalem to worship. And there's 120 people in this upper room. Now, these 120 people have been on a pretty crazy journey in the last kind of 3 years. A real small group of them got to hang out with this guy. There's 12 of them. And they got to hang out with this guy that changed everything. It changed their entire lives. They were doing one thing, and then they found themselves doing something completely different. And then, eventually, 3 years later, one of those 12 people, one of the closest people to their leader, sold him out. And can you imagine the confusion that would have caused? And then they saw their leader just get flogged, get beaten, get abused, get whipped, get hurt, get chained, and then eventually get crucified. And this person who changed their life and had spoke all these crazy? That's a new word. Incredible things. Was dead. And some of those 12, most of those 12, just kind of completely abandoned him when that was happening as well. They didn't want to know him. They denied him. There's a lot of confused people in that room. And then just to add to the confusion, to add to what's going on, 3 days later, their leader rocks up and is hey. And some of them doubt. And he shows them his hands, and then they believe, and then they spend a little bit more time with him, and then he says, okay, now I'm going to go. I've given you everything you need. I've prepared you for everything that you need to face, everything that you're going to enter into. And then he floats off up into the sky. And then you find yourself just looking in this room. There's 120 people there, and they're all waiting, they're all worshiping, they're all there in one accord. And they're just waiting. I think if you probably ask any of those people, I mean, you can keep your eyes closed if you want, or you can open them if you want to stay in that room, but if you ask any of those people that this is why, I don't know, maybe it's not theology, maybe it's just my thoughts, I was just thinking about this, but I think if you ask any of those people, hey, by the end of today, there's going to be 3,000 people who want to sit in this room with you. I don't know if any of them would be yeah, that's going to happen. Of course that's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe they would, but maybe not. Maybe they were just waiting. Maybe they didn't know what was going on. Yeah. And then I think if you ask those 120 people, hey, in 300 years' time, do you reckon 5% of the whole Roman Empire would want to sit in this room with you? That's 3 million people. And in those 300 years, there's going to be times of proper persecution. There's going to be times when you're getting chucked to the lions and set on fire and proper persecution. This isn't just nice stuff. This is horrible stuff. And if you say to them, yeah, 300 years, 3 million people, there's 120 of you in this room at the moment, and you've just gone on a roller coaster ride for the last 3 years with this guy who said he's changed everything, and now you're waiting in a room. Like, I don't know how many of those people would be like, yeah, I'm prepared for that. I'm ready for that. And then, like, we know the rest of the story, yeah? Holy Spirit comes, and it turns out that God's given them everything they need. He's prepared them in every way. And then you look through this book, like, and it's full of people that God's prepared, and it's full of people who didn't feel prepared. It's full of people who, you look at Moses, like, he didn't feel prepared. You look at David, like he spent, like Edith said, he spent his life looking after sheep, and then he learned to lead sheep, and then God prepared him to lead a nation, and like. Yeah, look at Joseph. Like, I love Joseph. Like, he was, like, arrogant, and then he was humbled, and in his humbling, he learned to lead humbly. Like, when he meets his brothers again, he's humble, and that's what God did. He humbled him and prepared him to be everything that he was called to be. Did he know that? Did he know that it was happening when it was going on? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe he didn't see it. But it happened because God's good and he's faithful. And this, like, guys, this isn't, I'm pretty simple with this kind of stuff. And we'll see that Paul is as well, the Apostle Paul. I did a theology degree recently, and I think we live in a culture where we kind of want evidence for stuff, right? I now look at, not everything, but sometimes it's really easy for me to get into scripture and look at, theological ideas and just be like, well, why? I need some evidence. I want to hear some different points of view about this. And but Paul, who's like, he's done more for theology than like anyone else ever. He takes a really simple track on this, and the reason why God prepares us is because he's good, and because he's faithful, and because he's never ever once left your side. When these guys were 120 of them in this room, God never left them. He was there. And then the Holy Spirit came, bang. And then we see what happens. We're here as a consequence of that. We're related to that. If you put it into a family tree, you can trace what we're doing here back to that room in first century Jerusalem. Like, that's our heritage. That's who we are. And like, every single one of those people, like even Jesus was prepared for what he did. He was prepared. He came to earth. He put aside his majesty. He laid it all aside. And he was born as a baby. And like, it's the only thing, I can't remember exactly where it is. Is it in Hebrews? It's the only thing we know about Jesus from where, when he's a child and he runs away and they find him at the temple. And then when we pick up the story in the Gospels when he's 30, I think it's in Hebrews, it says he learned obedience through his suffering. Like, he learned obedience. He learned how to carry stuff. Like, in that time, he was prepared. Jesus Christ was prepared by God through his life on earth to go to the cross and die for our sins. He was prepared, and God was with him the whole time. He was prepared for it. And you find him in Gethsemane going, God, like, Father, if there's any way that I can, like, not have to do this, then make it so. But it's your will that I'm going to do here, not mine. And he's prepared. He's prepared. He learned that. He learned that commitment. He learned that obedience to God through his life. Like, and he was like, yeah, now is the time when like the rubber hits the road, when I'm in the garden and I'm torn up, because like, I don't know about you, but I when I'm reading that, like, I see Jesus, like, as a human. Like, he's like, this is painful, this hurts. And he learned to say, God, I'm gonna trust you, I'm gonna be obedient to you. And he learned it through his life. He learned it through everything that he did and everything that he said and everything that he experienced and everything that happened to him, because he lived a human life like me and you, and he never once sinned. And he went to a cross and he took all that with him. He took everything that we could ever do and ever say, and he dealt with it and he got it out the way. This is like simple, but it's really easy to forget. And And it's like the same for us right now. If we're in a situation we just don't feel prepared, God's prepared you and has been preparing you. And he has done it, and I can guarantee that he's done it because he's good and he's faithful. And that's got nothing to do with a feeling. It's got nothing to do with anything other than his character. It's who he is. He's never once failed, and he never once will. And Paul, like the Apostle Paul, you see, some people might be like, oh, well, sometimes it feels like he has. Sometimes it feels like God has let me down. Sometimes it feels like this. Sometimes we're like, where was God when this happened? Where was God when I did that exam and I got a U? like what happened there? And Paul, responds to this. And he's writing in Romans 3, and he just kind of goes like, do you think their faithlessness cancels out his faithfulness? Not on your life. Depend on it. God keeps his word even when the whole world is lying through its teeth. So the image here is if the whole world got together and we all stood in a massive line and we were like, hey guys, do we all agree on this? Every single person in the world agrees on this fact. We know it to be true. And we say, God, hey, we figured this out and this is true. And God says, actually, no, it's not. Then all of us are wrong. He's right, because he always is, and he always has been, and he always will be. And if the Apostle Paul turns around in a situation where someone's kind of going, well, is God faithful? And Paul just goes, of course he is. Yeah, every time. I don't need to back that statement up. I don't need to give any evidence for that. Here's a book full of evidence for that. I think we're all living lives that are evidence of that. Our testimonies are proof of that. And we don't need evidence for that. He's good all the time. One guy says, a writer says, there is no way under any circumstances, regardless of what anyone and everyone might say or do, that God has done anything wrong, false, misleading, or unfaithful. That's the God that we serve. That's the God that we know. That's the God who looks after us. That's the God who prepares us. That's the God who's standing with you, who's present with you right now. That even though there's no music playing, and even though that feeling inside us might not be going, I feel God's present here. He's with you right now. You know that, yeah? Holy Spirit dwells in you. Emmanuel, that God is with us. That as soon as Christ came to earth, that was God playing his hand. I'm with you now. I'm present with you. I'm with you in your life. I'm with you in all the trials, in all the temptations, in all the circumstances. I'm here. And I'm just building on what you just said. But wherever you're at, whatever you're doing in your life personally, whatever situation you feel unprepared for, God's always prepared you more than you think you are. You might feel overwhelmed by something, but I guarantee you, he doesn't put stuff in your path that you can't handle, and he's with you, and he'll see it through, and he won't ever fail. He won't ever let you down. That's the thing, and that's got nothing to do with anything other than who he is. It's just who he is. He can't fail. It's impossible for him to fail. And it's the same with us. It's the same with Josh Gen. It's the same with Bath City Church. God's with us. It's his promise to us, and it's got nothing to do with anything that we can or can't do, and it's got everything to do with who he is. And we can't take that away from him. He wouldn't be a very good God if we could influence that. And God's got us. However you're feeling right now, with everything that's been going on the last couple of weeks, God's prepared us. We're ready for this. Totally ready for this. Might not feel like it sometimes, but he has. He's done it because he always does, and he always, always will. And it's really simple, really simple, really simple, really simple, but it's true, and it's easy to lose sight of sometimes. So we're not going to have any ministry, but if you want to just stand with me, I'm just going to pray. I'm going to pray basically just that prayer, what we've been talking about. Yeah, if you want to like stretch out your hands, do whatever you need to do to kind of get comfortable. But God, Holy Spirit, thank you that you're here and you're present right now. Thank you that we're just meeting around you. We want to talk about you. We want to learn from you, and we want to talk to you. And everything we do here is for that. And Father, I just thank you that you're so good and you're so faithful. And it's impossible for you to fail. That regardless of our circumstances, regardless of our situations, regardless of the state of our relationships, regardless of the state of our families, regardless of the state of our finances, regardless of the state of our studying, regardless of the state of our lives, that you're faithful and you're good, and you'll never fail, and you'll never let us down, and you stand with us, and you're committed to us, and you walk through everything with us. You know, it says when you walk through the shadow of the valley of death, you don't camp there and you don't stay there. You walk through there. So you can walk through it and you can look back because he's faithful and he sees stuff through. He's walking with you. Whatever situation you're facing right now, he's walking with you. And he's got you. He's totally got you. You're safe with him. Completely safe with him. He's your father. It's what Josh has been saying. Like, he's the good shepherd. And he doesn't fail, and he doesn't lose you, and he doesn't let you down, and he doesn't lead you in a place that you can't handle. And he doesn't leave you into a place that you're going to be vulnerable and isolated and alone. He never does that. He's a good father. And God, I just thank you for that. We thank you for that. We worship you. And just as Daniel and just as the church, the early church, just worshipped you for it, we just want to worship you. We want that to inspire our worship. We want to just know you more. Father, thank you that you're so good, that you know, you could not move again. You could not do anything else in the world. You could have no influence again on the world, and you'd still be worthy to receive all of our praise and all of our glory and everything that we can possibly give you. That you sustain creation, that creation is sustained through Christ Jesus. That we owe you everything, and you're good all the time. In Jesus' name, amen.